Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. Spellbinders just released their new Kaleidoscope Arch collection. There's a die set, stamp set, a stencil, and also a better press plate. I have all of the items in the collection except the better press plate because I still haven't jumped on board with the new better press system. Although I will admit it looks amazing. Here's a look at the stamp set, and I love the unique design of the sentiments. There's the happy birthday, thanks so much, and there's also some smaller sentiments that you can mix and match with the larger sentiments. Enjoy your day, for everything, make a wish, and there are also several different floral images. The die set is called Stitched Kaleidoscope Arch. It includes 12 dies, some little flowers, sentiment from me to you, and there's also the one arch. It has all the little holes, and you could use this piece to add the fun stitching. But that die also works even if you don't want to do the stitching, since it'll add the tiny holes and the etch detail to look like a faux stitch line. I love how the large words are designed to fit inside the arch. The stencil is called Kaleidoscope Window. Beautiful design in a 6x6 size. It's a single stencil and you can use it to create beautiful backgrounds. I do have a couple of cards to share with you using the new Kaleidoscope Arch collection. And if you are interested in any of the products, I do have links provided in the description box below. For both of my cards, I will be using the stencil. I have a silicone mat on my craft desk, and I'm using Waffle Flowers grip mat to hold the paper and also the stencil in place. I have some light pink cardstock. The ink color I'm using is Polished by Catherine Pooler. I love using the grip mat, especially for single stencils, since it holds everything without me needing to use any tacky tape. I'm adding a very light amount of ink on the background, just enough to create the pretty pattern. Once I'm happy with the stencil background, I'll remove the stencil. Now I'll add a lovely gold watercolor splatter all over my pink background. Once the paint dries, it has a beautiful shimmery finish. It's not quite dry, so I will set that aside and start working on the sentiment. I've already set up the sentiment in my mini MISTI. I've already gone ahead and cut out one of the decorative arches, and the cardstock is Spellbinders Dahlia Color, sort of a dusty rose color. The ink color I'm using is dark chocolate from scrapbook.com, and I did ink it up several times to get a nice solid impression. Now I'll flip over the arch and add a couple of gold accents behind it. I used some gold pearlescent cardstock that I have on hand. The piece goes about halfway behind the arch, so I did cut out two of them, and I did cut off one of the little points since they will overlap. I'll just glue them on the back side. There are two different designs of this little arch border. They each have different cutout areas, and I like how you can put them behind the main arch for that little extra detail. And before the glue adheres completely, I'm making sure all of the pieces are lined up. Now I'll flip over this piece, put some thin foam dimension on the back side. I'm using Spellbinders White Foam Squares Mix. This is the 1 millimeter thickness. And I did cut several of the squares in half, a little easier to go around the arch. I pulled out the background to see if the paint has dried, and there are still some wet spots, so I'll leave that alone. While I'm waiting for that to completely dry, I'll pull out all of my die cut flowers and leaves. I have most of the flowers already assembled. They're very simple designs. I used two different pink cardstock colors for the large flower. The small flower, I used some white pearlescent cardstock. And for the last flower, I used two different shades of pink cardstock. In the center of all of the flowers, I have a mustard yellow cardstock color. I am putting foam dimension on the back of all of the flowers. I need to cut some small pieces to fit behind the teeny tiny little white flowers. I'll check my background again, and it looks like it's basically all dry. So I'll layer that piece on some more of the Dahlia cardstock. My stenciled background is 4 inches by 5¼ inches. The cardstock layer is an additional 1/8 of an inch. I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. All of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size, 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. Now I'll add the arch with the sentiment thanks. I've also stamped out the sentiment for everything, and I used the banner die that's included with the set. I will put some foam dimension on the very right and left side where it goes off of the arch piece. Then I'll adhere it in place. Now I'll start adding all of the lovely flowers above and below the sentiment. I'm putting more of the flowers in the lower left-hand corner and just a few in the upper right-hand corner. In the lower left-hand corner, I'll first add the 2 larger flowers. Then I'll start tucking some of the leaves and stems underneath the larger flowers. The one stem that has the 3 little branches, this is where you can add the small white flowers. Then I'll add more leaves on the right side of the small white flowers. Then I'll add the layered flower with the 2 pink colors, and I do have that flower attached to one of the small stems. Next, I'll add 2 of the larger pink flowers in the upper right-hand corner, tuck in some of the leaves, and I am cutting down some of the stems. Makes it a little easier to tuck underneath the flower, and that part won't be visible. For the 2 small white flowers in the upper right-hand corner, I'm also adding one of the stem pieces. I'll first glue down the stem, then I'll add the small flower on top. I'll add one of the small white flowers underneath the light pink flower and the last small white flower above the darker pink flower. I'll also tuck in one more of the leafy branches. I'll just trim off the very bottom portion of the stem, tuck it underneath the darker pink flower, trying to make sure most of the leaves aren't hanging off the edge of the card. I still want it to be able to fit inside an A2 size envelope. I felt like there was too much of a gap in the lower left-hand corner, so I cut out 2 more of the small white flowers. I'll just adhere the center of the flower, put foam dimension on the back, and add those final 2 flowers, filling in the little gapped area. And I forgot to hit record on this one portion, so I've added the last 2 small flowers, and I also used a clear glitter brush to add a little sparkle to the center of all of the flowers. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. For the second card, I did stencil the background just a little bit darker. I think both of the cards are pretty, but I prefer the lighter look. Now moving on to card design number 2. I'll be stenciling on some craft cardstock. I have a silicone mat and the waffle flower grit mat all in place. I'll press down on the cardstock and stencil to make sure they don't move. The ink color I'm using is Honeybee Stamp's Brilliant White ink. I'm adding a very light amount of ink, and I'm not adding it all over the background. The lower right-hand corner and the upper left-hand corner, I'm not adding any ink, and I'm also leaving a very soft edge. With the white ink, it really adds just a subtle design in the background. The white really shows up in the video, but I think it gets lighter as it dries. This is a pigment ink, so it does take a little bit longer to dry. I cut this panel to 4 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8 of an inch. I'll put ATG tape on the back and add my card front onto a card base, leaving 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I've already gone ahead and cut out a couple of the arches. One from the same Dahlia cardstock color and another from some white pearlescent cardstock. On the white piece, I'll use the die that adds all the tiny holes and the etch lines. I won't be doing any of the stitching. Instead, I'm layering the 2 pieces together, offsetting them just slightly so you can see just a peek of the Dahlia cardstock at the bottom of the piece and also through all the holes on the white piece. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere this piece on the card. I am placing an acrylic block on top for some added weight while the glue dries. For a sentiment, I'm adding From Me to You, And this is the sentiment that's included with the die set. I'll put foam dimension on the very right and left side of the banner piece, put glue on the back of the sentiment area, and adhere it in place. I've already gone ahead and cut out and assembled lots of flowers, and I'm using the same pink cardstock colors that I used on the previous card. The pink cardstock for the small flowers is the same pink cardstock I used for the background on the previous card. I'll add 2 of the larger flowers underneath the sentiment on the right side, tuck in several of the leaf pieces, also adding 1 of the small light pink flowers and a final leaf piece underneath it. Then I'll start adding lots of flowers above the sentiment. I'll first attach the stem with the 3 little areas to add the small pink flowers. I did add some foam dimension on the back of each of the flowers. I'll remove the release paper. When I'm adhering the small pink flowers, I'm rotating them so they're not all going the same direction. The die for the small flowers cuts out 3 at the same time, and I think they're all the same size and shape. Next, I'll add the 2 large flowers above the sentiment, more on the left side. Now I'll start tucking in the leaves and also the layered flowers. And I did attach the layered flowers to the stems. Just filling in all the different areas so I have a nice full flower arrangement above the sentiment. And I am trimming off the stem, that way the flowers aren't sticking up too far. And it's also easier to tuck them in underneath the flowers. And 1 final leaf piece to adhere. For a final finishing touch, I'll use a clear glitter brush and add some sparkle to the center of each of the flowers. Since I missed recording this portion on the previous card, I made sure I was recording it this time. So there is my finished card, and I did make 2 using this design. Even though I followed the same card designs, the 2 cards are slightly different. The stenciling is a little different, the layout of all the die cut pieces are different, but that's the nice thing about card making. No 2 cards are ever exactly the same. Now here's another look at the 4 cards I made using Spellbinders' brand new Kaleidoscope Arch collection. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links provided in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.